Bigfoot Captured is a History Channel documentary where they capture Bigfoot. Obviously, they don't manage to contain the legendary beast. I'm pretty sure that would make the front page of the paper. But most of this documentary is a dramatization on how they might be able to capture it. Does this blend of fact and fiction work? Let's find out. First, we meet our narrator of the film, which, in all my research, I've found his name to be narrator. So maybe I'll just call him Bill. Bill's talking about how he knows if Sasquatch was captured, it would change the world, and he wants to be there when they do it. While studying the topic, he met a guy named Trevor, who claims to have had a Bigfoot encounter, so they meet up with him. He's pretty nervous to go back into the woods, even though it's been over 7 years since his encounter. The thing is, I'm pretty sure this guy's just an actor, and his encounter is all fabricated. So, right off the bat, I don't trust these guys. How do you know if they're telling you something that's been researched and documented and studied, or they just made it up for a TV show? Trevor finally gets to the spot where he supposedly had his encounter, and he tells us what happened, which boils down to a rock was thrown at him. They don't stay here long because Trevor's getting real scared, so they decide to hike a little further down the mountain and set up camp. In the middle of the night, they hear someone, or something, walking around their campsite, breaking limbs. Well, they survive that encounter and move on to meeting a guy named Conrad. He's gathered up a team and is bound and determined to capture this thing. Really, the only important people in this group are James, the anthropologist, Beth, who helps with the cameras, and Dan, the wilderness survival guy, and the resident Bigfoot skeptic. Day one is to hike into the bush about 5 miles and find a good spot to fly in their homemade cage, built to contain the beast. Now, finally, we get to the documentary part. And who else can they talk to but Dr. Jeff Meldrum, the modern-day Bigfoot guru? He tells the crew that he's actually working on designing and 3D printing a Bigfoot skeleton, full size. So that should be interesting. But first, he has to show off his collection of footprints, starting with the one that started it all, the Jerry Crew cast. This is the one that earned Bigfoot its name. Of course, they bring up Gigantopithecus and how some people believe that it might have migrated across the Bering Strait to get to North America, all stuff we've heard many times before in Bigfoot docs. They describe Gigantopithecus as 8 to 10 foot tall, long arms, short legs, and looking like a modern-day orangutan. Sounds like Bigfoot. But here's something I haven't heard too much before. Some people believe Sasquatch has a closer link to humans, and a branch off of the robust Australopithecus, which looks more like the apes from Planet of the Apes. Large teeth and jaw, but a smaller brain. To make this 3D model, Meldrum's using a Neanderthal skeleton mixed with footage from the best Bigfoot evidence we have, the Patterson-Gimlin footage. They talk about how both men, Roger Patterson and Bob Gimlin, swear it's the real deal. But the reality is the footage is still hotly debated to this day. And now, back to the fake stuff. They're still out wandering around and they find a deer trail. They ask how Dan knows it's a deer trail and not a Bigfoot trail. And he has this to say.
How do you know this isn't a Bigfoot trail?
Mostly because Bigfoot isn't real and deer are real.
Well, okay then. They make it to a camp and set up trail cams. Conrad and Dan notice some odd trees around their camp. Some of them have broken branches on each side, an indication that a bear has been climbing up and they broke. But some trees have huge limbs broken on only one side. Huh. At night, they hear wood knocks and whoops and all go out to have a listen. And then, nothing. It's gone. Now they talk about 3 real-life videos. The Marble Mountain video, the Paul Freeman footage, and the Patterson-Gimlin footage. Remember, the PGF is what they're using to make their 3D printed Bigfoot skeleton. So let's check that out. They say it took about 1,600 hours to print, It's 135 parts and 8.5 foot tall. When it's all said and done, yep, it's pretty big. Back to the team out in the woods who did find some large footprints and managed to capture an eyeball on their trail cam. So there's that. The next piece of footage that they look at is the Marble Mountain video, where you see something silhouetted walking down the mountain. And, I mean, sure, you can say it's big, it looks like it is, but unless you can take a 6-foot tall human in the exact same spot, this doesn't really mean that much. They talked to the kid that was in the video. I guess his dad was the one recording. He said that earlier that day they found a hut structure with 12-inch diameter limbs used to build it. No saw marks. His dad was recording the structure when they saw it coming down the mountain. But again, is it 4 or 40 feet tall? I don't know. Now we head over to the Himalayas, because you can't forget about the Yeti. The locals believe in the beast and know it's been here a long time. They even have a story from 326 BC that Alexander the Great came to hunt one, but of course he failed. They talk to the locals. One guy has a picture he took of footprints taken at 18,000 feet, and they go on to talk about the Eric Shipton print that took the world by storm and started Yeti fever. Finally, they take a look at the famous Yeti scalp, even getting it out of its glass case to take a closer look at it. The locals all believe it's real, but it's been tested, and guess what? It's a yak. Talk about the biggest buzzkill of the century. Back to our team, who are once again woken up from their tents to hear howls out in the woods.
Damn it, comrade, where is he?
Dan thinking it's just people who are screwing with him, until a large boulder's thrown. Then things get a little bit more serious. Everyone takes off running, with Beth being the one who's getting chased. Luckily, she manages to avoid being captured herself. And in the morning, the team regroups and Dan yells at everyone for running off into the woods when they have loaded weapons. Beth remembers her footage and how she knows she got something. But when they find the camera, nothing. The SD card's been corrupt.
Well, turn on.
Now Dr. Meldrum goes out into the woods, but this time he's using drone technology to hopefully spot the creature. They perform an aerial survey, and Meldrum and his colleague, John Bitternackle, watch, hoping to spot something. Eventually, they do. Something bipedal is definitely walking around the woods down there, so they head out on foot to its exact location. While they do that, our guys work on building the cage, and it looks pretty heavy duty. That night, they go to check it out, and they find something inside the cage. But it's not Bigfoot. It's a dead deer. And then, out from the weeds, he attacks. It's mass chaos for a bit until it cuts to a commercial. But luckily for you, you don't have to wait for that. When we get back, somehow they've managed to capture Bigfoot. And now the real fun begins. But first, we have to check in with Meldrum, who's made it to that exact location they saw the figure. But yeah, obviously it's gone now, and there isn't much evidence. In my opinion, it was probably just a dude. What if it was a guy out there burying a body or something like that, and they stumbled upon it? That would be pretty freaky. Anyway, they do find a calf bone and talk about how quickly nature disposes of its waste. A deer can be completely gone in just 14 days. I can actually attest to this. I recently and unfortunately found a dead deer on my property. I'm not kidding. Days later, it was basically gone. But at this point, you don't want to know about this. They just captured Bigfoot. Well, it's fake, but still, you know what I mean. They approach the cage slowly and tranquilize the beast. It takes a while for him to calm down, but eventually he does, and James goes in to get some samples. Mainly hair and blood, so they can establish a genetic profile. Once he's done, he books it out of there, and when Bigfoot wakes up, he's much calmer, almost admitting defeat, knowing he's captured. He starts singing, for some reason, and everyone heads to bed. In the morning, they check on their new furry friend, and wouldn't you know it, he's gone. James blames Dan for not locking the cage, which he swears he did. They fight back and forth for a long time, but in the end, it doesn't matter. They lost their prize, and there's no way Bigfoot will fall for the same trick twice. And that was Bigfoot Captured. And in the end, you can't trust them. You don't know if what you're watching is supposed to be actual research or just a little skit they're playing out. Other documentaries mix this armchair research and real-life investigation, but here you know everything that they're doing out in the woods is all fake. The best part of the movie, by far, and the reason I wanted to watch it in the first place, is the suit. It is fantastic. Yes, it's a little bit more human looking in the face, but just look at this shot, how he towers over Beth. Something so many movies get wrong is the height of these creatures. Here, they got everything right with this suit. Meldrum's fine, but he's really the only pro that they interview. It would have been nice to seek out Bob Gimlin or Cliff Barrickman. Somebody to maybe mix it up a little bit. Other than that, there's nothing new brought to the table here. I would rather they have just put their talents in suit making to good use and make a full-length movie, instead of trying to trick us with a documentary. I give Bigfoot Captured 2.5 murderers out in the woods. Out of 4.
Just gonna get us something. Bigfoot or my ex-wife, one or the other.